Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and hello everyone. We are from group 6. So in this video we are gonna do some kind of explanations regarding about our morphological analysis based on the findings on our 3 articles that we found. So the articles that we found are based on scientific articles, news articles, and academic articles. Okay, so the purpose of this morphological analysis is to demonstrate our systematic analysis within the authentic text based on the 3 articles that we found. Like I mentioned it before, we have 3 different types of sources, which is news article, academic articles, and scientific articles. So the data sets from these 3 sources are also representing different categories. So basically, when we are analyzing these 3 sources, we try to identify the word formation, the sentence structure, and the clause types. So these analyses are then integrated onto explaining how morphological and syntactic choices option function within the discourse, highlighting typical patterns, and creating potential tensions between the clarity and precisions. So basically, in this morphological analysis, it demonstrates how the professional and the academic context are different when it comes to writing styles and the way they are applicating the grammatical rules. So we try our best to analyze the articles on these 3 sources.
So now is the data overview for our analysis of verb phrase patterns. To set the stage, we examine 3 distinct discourse communities: academic, news, and scientific. If we look at the total rows across all 3 tables, we see a fascinating split that reveals how these genres prioritize time. For source A and source C, our academic and scientific text, we found 100% frequency of present tense. This isn't just a coincidence. According to the University of Hull, this timeless present is the standard for establishing facts that aren't tied to a specific date but are true for all time. However, when we shift our gaze to source B, the BBC News report, the data flips. Here, we see a 90% past tense. This is because the value of news is immediacy. It is a recount of a specific event that has already occurred. Regarding voice, all 3 sources shows a different for active voice, ranging from 60 to 78%. This keeps the writing direct. However, the consistent presence of the passive voice, peaking at 40%, in the news report is crucial. It serves a functional purpose. It allows the writer to maintain an objective distance, focusing on the action rather than the actor.
For my part, I'm comparing academic writing, which is source A, and scientific writing, which is source C, by looking at how they use verb, tense, aspect, and voice. First, in terms of tense, both sources mainly use the present tense. This is because present tense helps convey ideas as general truths and ongoing knowledge. However, scientific writing also includes some past tense, mainly to describe experimental methods or procedures. When we look at aspect, there is a clear difference. Academic writing uses a mix of simple, progressive, and perfect aspects. This helps the writer explain arguments, shows ongoing discussion, and connect past research to the present. In contrast, scientific writing relies almost entirely on the simple aspects. which makes the information clearer, more direct and more precise. For voice, both sources prefer active voice, but academic writing use slightly more passive voice. This shifts attention away from the writer and towards the ideas or claims being discussed. Scientific writing, however, limits passive voice to keep the focus on result and processes. Overall, these grammatical choices show that academic writing focuses more on argumentation and explanation, while scientific writing focuses on objective and concise reporting. So, grammar is used strategically to support the purpose of each type of writing.
Now, let's leave the numbers behind and look at the actual linguistic evidence. When we compare source A, academic, and source B, news, we see two completely different ways of building narrative. First, the aspect of time. In source A, we see a dominance of the simple aspect. If you look at the examples, verbs like is and are blurring are used. This suggests state of reality that is constant. Contrast this with source B. Here, the perfect aspect hits 50%. Look at the phrase like had rented and had been read. By using the perfect aspect, the journalist isn't just telling you what happened. They are providing the history of the event. It links past action to the current news moment, which is vital for storytelling in journalism. Second, stance and engagement. Now, let's look at voice again, but through the lens of stance. In the academic test, source A, the 70% active voice is a strategic tool. As Highland and Young note, modern academic writing uses the active voice for persuasive engagement. When the author says the boundaries are blurry, they are driving a specific argument forward and taking ownership that observant. In source B, however, the passive voice is much more prominent. Phrases like was found or were discovered are used intentionally. In a news discourse community, the focus must stay on the newsworthiness of the event. The passive voice allows the journalist to hide the discoverer and put the discovery at the center of the sentence, creating a sense of neutral, unbiased reporting. Third, functional summary. Ultimately, the academic test uses the present tense and active voice to establish authority and persuasion. The news report uses the past tense and passive voice to establish immediacy and objectivity. These are not just grammatical differences, they are the fingerprints of the discourse communities themselves. To wrap up, our analysis of source A and B shows that grammar is the tool that allows a writer to meet the expectations of the audience. Whether it is the timeless truth of academia or the immediate report of the news, the verb phrase is where the genre truly comes to life.
When we look at how information is shared, the language used is rarely accidental. Today I'm comparing a news report, source B, and scientific article, source C. While they might cover similar topics, their linguistic is completely different, shifting from the immediate past of journalism to the timeless present of academia. Let's start with tense. Source B, the news report, lives in the past. 90% of its verbs are in the past tense because it's recounting completed events, things that have already happened. In total contrast, source C use the present tense 100% of the time. According to the University of Hull, this is standard for scientific writing. It transforms a specific experiment into an established fact or ongoing truth. It's not about what happened in the lab, it's about how the world works right now. Moving to aspect, we see how these stories are built. The news report used the perfect aspect for about 50% of the time to provide context, linking the past action to present news moment. However, the scientific article used a mix of simple and progressive aspects. This allowed the author to describe transformation as they occur. Biber and Conrad note that this structure gives academic writing a sense of timeless authority. It feels universal rather than anecdotal. Finally, let's look at voice. Surprisingly, source A used the active voice about 70% of the time, while we often think of science as impersonal. Highland and Jiang argued that modern researchers use the active voice as deliberate strategy to show a clear authorial stance and persuade the reader. Meanwhile, the news report used the passive voice about 40% of the time. This isn't an accidental. It's a tool to maintain that neutral, detached journalist persona, focusing on the event rather than the person reporting it. In summary, while the news report on the world of yesterday, the academic article constructs the knowledge of the day. One value detachment, the other value persuade authority.
This table presents the strength of linguistic patterns found in the three different genres. The first one is academic articles, next is news report, and the last one is scientific reports. Each genre use specific grammatical choices to effectively achieve its communicative purpose. Starting with source A, the academic article, one key strength is its focus on persuasive engagement and critical discussion. Academic writing does not simply present information. Instead, it aims to convince readers through logical reasoning and theoretical positioning. This is achieved through the use of evaluative language and structured argumentation, which invites readers to critically engage with the ideas present. In addition, academic articles employ a wider range of grammatical aspects. This variety allows authors to explain ongoing debates, describe concrete research processes, and highlight the implication of findings. Such flexibility enables a more nuanced presentation of ideas, supporting deeper analysis and interpretation. Furthermore, the strong use of active voice in academic writing helps to clearly articulate the authorial stance. By explicitly positioning the writer as an active contributor to knowledge, the text strengthens its persuasive impact and reinforce the author's academic authority. Moving on to source B, the news report, its primary strength lies in prioritizing efficiency and immediacy in order to inform a general audience. News writing is designed for quick consumption, which explains its preference for concise sentence structure and straightforward grammatical choices. The frequent use of active voice in the news report enhances clarity and reader engagement. Actions and events are presented directly, making the information easier to follow and reducing potential ambiguity for readers. As a result, this linguistic pattern enables readers to quickly grasp key facts and outcomes, commonly referred to as the bottom line. This is especially important in the news context, where the audience seeks rapid understanding rather than in-depth theoretical discussion. Finally, in source C, which is the scientific report, it emphasizes authority, objectivity, and reliability. Scientific writing aims to present findings in a natural and factual manner, minimizing personal interpretation. By presenting findings as timeless and universally valid facts, scientific reports rely heavily on the simple present tense. This suggests that the information holds true beyond the specific context of the study and reinforce its scientific credibility. Moreover, this consistent linguistic approach reinforces stability and neutrality in scientific knowledge. The absence of subjective language strengthens trust in the findings and ensures that the focus remains on empirical evidence rather than the researcher's personal perspective. Overall, these strengths highlight how each genre strategically employs linguistic patterns to meet the expectation of its audience and fulfill its communicative goals.
Okay, so now let's take a look at the cons of the pattern of the three sources that we gathered. So the one that we gathered are categorized from source A, source B, source C. So source A is the academic article, source B is the news report article, and the source C is the scientific articles. So basically the cons for the source A is linguistic complexity contributes to knowledge gatekeeping. Second, dense argumentative style prioritize expertise and persuasion over accessibility. Third one, important ideas may be obscured by grammatical and stylistic sophistication. For the source B, emphasize on the immediate past can limit deeper historical or systematic context. And second, it focuses on speed and immediacy may result in oversimplification of a complex issue. Third one, use of passive voice to maintain neutrality can obscure responsibility. For source C, the cons are strict reliance on 100% present tense and simple aspect creates a static reading experience. Second, it appears detached and inaccessible to non-specialist audience, which means that since the scientific articles are using scientific terms, only certain people who are studying in the science field might understand it, while the regular audience couldn't really understand when they are reading the articles. And lastly, effective of setting universal laws but lacks narrative progression.
Source A explore how modern academic writing has shifted away from the rigid objectivity of traditional empirical reports, while it still utilizes the present simple terms to convey scientific accuracy and universal truth. The author highlights a growing trend toward reader engagement. By citing Highland and Jiang, the text explains that the contemporary scholar often use the active voice to show a clear stance and persuade their readers. A key example provided is the use of the progressive aspect. For example, the phrase boundaries are blurring. This linguistic choice signals immediacy and ongoing transformation, moving the focus away from static data. Ultimately, Source A argues that these philosophical authorities ensuring readers engage with the broader discussion rather than just raw finding. Moving to Source B, we analyze a BBC News report where the core values are accuracy and neutrality. Unlike the persuasive tone in modern academia, journalistic writing relies on a detached and impartial style. The script notes that the BBC achieves this through specific grammatical structures. Primarily, the past tends to recount completed events and passive construction. These choices deliberately de-emphasize the reporter's personal viewpoint instead of foregrounding the actions and outcome of the story. By avoiding personal interpretation or judgment, the language will remain consistent with professional journalistic standards. In short, Source B illustrates how grammatical precision is used to maintain a neutral voice that prioritizes verified information over authorial present. Finally, Source C focuses on the value of traditional scientific articles. Like the BBC report, its primary goal are accuracy and objectivity, but it employs different linguistic tools to achieve them. The text highlights the consistent use of the present simple tense to frame research findings as general truth, a concept backed by Bible and Conrad. Furthermore, the passive voice is used extensively as crossword notes. Phrases like "is determined" or are magnified shift the reader's attention away from the researcher and onto the scientific process itself. This creates an authoritative and neutral tone. By removing the human element from the sentence structure, sources ensure that the reader focus remains entirely on the data and the validity of the study's finding.
Okay, so for our morphological analysis, we are using 4 types of AI tools which help us in our whole process of our analysis of the morphology. So basically, we are using ChatGPT, Quillbot, Grammarly, and Gemini. So Quillbot and Grammarly help us in rephrasing our words to avoid any repetition and to make our sentence is more structured. And ChatGPT and Gemini is the tools that help us to give us some suggestions from our data, so we can more have like an elaborate details for our analysis. Because when we doing the analysis from the table, we need some kind of long explanations regarding about it. So we have to avoid some certain parts that are unnecessary to avoid any repetitions also, and make some adjustment for perfectly suited for the grammaticals. Okay, so for our morphological analysis, we are using 4 types of AI tools which help us in our whole process of our analysis of the morphology. So basically, we are using ChatGPT, Quillbot, Grammarly, and Gemini. So Quillbot and Grammarly help us in rephrasing our words to avoid any repetition and to make our sentence is more structured. And ChatGPT and Gemini is the tools that help us to give us some suggestions from our data, so we can more have like an elaborate details for our analysis. Because when we doing the analysis from the table, we need some kind of long explanations regarding about it, so we have to avoid some certain parts that are unnecessary to avoid any repetitions also, and make some adjustment for perfectly suited for the grammaticals.